Welcome to the amazing digital circus!
Hey guys, I'm back. Seriously, back. I don't know how often I'm going to be releasing content for a while. I do have to kind of get back in the swing of things, but I am finally, after, God, how long has it been? Months. It's been months. I don't even freaking know. Of uploading nothing but gaming footage that I have had in my back pocket for a long time and just hadn't edited yet. I feel motivated to do this again. And so I am back to talk about something that I have never talked about on the channel before, except maybe kind of offhand in passing. I think I might have mentioned it in my review of the pilot for Knights of Guinevere, that I was already a fan of Glitch and excited that it was going to be on Glitch, specifically because of this show. I know that the hip thing to do with this show is react to the episodes, but I've already seen all the ones that are out, and I know the final one is going to be in the theaters. I am recording this the day before it goes into the theaters, because I want to avoid spoilers as much as possible for that. I do believe there was a leak of the episode. I haven't sought that out. I have purposefully ignored anyone talking about it, because I want to talk about this before that episode, before anything is out about that episode. So I have some thoughts, I have some opinions, some theories. Thought that might be fun. Point is, I can't do that. But I am gonna glaze this show, because it's really, really good. And then when the final episode hits YouTube, I'll react to that and then talk about it afterwards. And I might do more hybrid react review stuff on the channel, because I understand reaction content gets a bad rap, and I understand why, but it's fun. I like to watch it. Some of it's really bad, but I like to watch it when the person doing it has stuff to say. I don't think I'll go through entire episodes and react to like literally everything in them like some people do. I think I'll just react to certain parts if I ever really get into that. But I enjoy it. I feel like I'm kind of hanging out and watching the episode with somebody else when I do it. It feels nice. Let me know what you think about that. It's something I'm considering. But I am going to react to that and then talk about it. Glitch seems pretty okay with people doing that, even if it's the episode in its entirety. So I might like live stream my reaction. I doubt I'll live stream like watching the literal premiere, because I'll want to pause and stuff. But I might live stream my reaction. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. The closer we get to that final episode, and the more I've been rewatching this show a lot. Just kind of in my downtime when I'm doing other stuff, I'll have it on. I just really want to talk about it. For those who do not know, The Amazing Digital Circus is kind of the show that launched Glitch, and made them big. And while there is other Glitch stuff that I don't really like I just don't like Murder Drones. I know a lot of people love it. I just don't like it. The animation's great. The character designs are awesome. The action's cool. Everything the characters say pisses me off. It's just so grating. No shade if you like it. No shade if you love it. If it's your favorite thing ever, it's just not for me. And I don't think I'm gonna like Gaslight District, even if it comes to a full series, because like, I don't know, it just wasn't my vibe. But Knights of Guinevere is awesome. Gameaverse looks great. I watched the pilot of that a few times, looking for secrets and stuff. It's so packed with Easter eggs, and I actually think I'm going to talk about it a little bit later, because I know the creation of it was kind of inspired by the creation of RWBY, and even the presentation of it has stuff in common with the early presentation of RWBY, and I find that really interesting. Also, like, I've never watched a ton of Game Grumps, but it's got that Game Grumps humor, because it's a Game Grumps. It's a Game Grumps show. And I do like that style of humor. So, point is, I like a lot of what they do. Like some of the other stuff, I've watched a little bit of it. It's fine. But, like, man, there's just something about Digital Circus that makes it better. And I think that thing is Gooseworks, the creator of the show. So I really think once I am done with this series, once the final episode comes out, because it is definitely the final episode. That's been clear for a long time. I need to go watch more of Goose's stuff, like explore more of Goose's content. I just haven't really had the time to sit down and go through it, because there's a decent amount, right? Haven't had a chance to do that. Because, like, I really think Goose might be one of the examples of a really standout, once-in-a-generation kind of storyteller. The Amazing Digital Circus, for example, is based on and draws heavy inspiration from the short story For I Have No Mouth But I Must Scream, which I read once a while ago. It also has a video game adaptation which changes up the story. It's actually, the Amazing Digital Circus is actually more based on that, which is kind of where the video game-like elements of this world come from. They're inspired by that. It really changes up the character arcs of the characters and how everything ends. But it's not just like a straight retelling of that story with silly-looking cartoon characters. It completely inverts elements of the story that you would think would be integral, foundational to the story itself. And it does it successfully. Like, for example, the AI in this case, Cain, is not malicious. It's very obvious that he's not, from dialogue that he has only with himself, for no other character's benefit. Whereas the AI in the source material absolutely is. And unlike in the video game adaptation, from what I understand at least, the characters aren't going through the arcs that they are, unraveling their traumas and backstories as a way of escaping this place, like, explicitly. But they are still working through their issues in a way that I think is going to help them live with their situation by the end of the show. Every single one of the characters are immediately understandable, and I think likable. I like all of them, even if some of them I only just like as characters. Like, I don't think I'd ever hang out with Jax. But as a character, I love him. And based on what I know about him, I kind of just want good things to happen to him. I want him to start doing good things for other people, too, instead of treating him like shit. But I don't want anything bad to happen to the guy, because I don't think he's a bad person. And from this point forward, I'm going to be speaking as if you've seen the show. So I apologize for that if you haven't. But the way that works, the way this complete asshat of a character who treats everybody like crap all the time, bullies people, and claims to want the worst for them because he thinks it's funny, the way he can come across as a character that you still want good things to happen for is because it's so clear that he's lying. It's so clear that he only does the things he does because he is trying on purpose to dissociate and convince himself that the things that happened here don't matter because he's been hurt so much by so many of the things that happen here in this weird digital world. And that's tragic. That's a tragic character. And you want tragic characters to no longer be tragic characters, right? That's just a thing that human beings tend towards when they're interacting with fiction. Like, let's use this as an example of how Goose handles character building. In the very first episode, not only do we get like a literal roll call followed by like a literal showcase of what all the characters are about in their first interactions with the newly appeared Pomni. Not only do we get both of those things without either of them feeling like exposition, even though they are, because one of them, the roll call, is part of the awesome diegetic theme song that I kind of wish was in every episode because it's just so good. And then the other, that showcase of the characters' different personalities, is in service to introducing a new character to the world, so it makes sense that we'd be kind of getting an introduction to these people and the world too. But later in the episode, after we get our abstraction of Kaufmo, the abstraction being like the bad thing that can happen to you that these characters are all trying to avoid in their quest to maybe eventually escape this place, Jax, comes across two other characters out in the open, and he seems to do something really rude to them, pushing them down into a hole and then following them, presumably, if you believe what he said about himself earlier, to watch and see if anything funny happens to them. Like, he even confirms it later. He only went down in the hole to hide from the abstracted Kaufmo. And, like, if he were just an asshole that didn't care about anybody, he could have left Kinger and Gangle up there to distract Kaufmo, but he didn't. He pushed them down the hole in a way that no one would realize what he was doing, because I think he was trying to save them. Because as much as he claims not to care about anybody here, he clearly does. I think, honestly, he cares probably more than anybody else. He just also really cares about his own self-image, to his own detriment. But I think that scene with him pushing them down the Zubul hole was like 15 seconds long or something. And you get so much about his character there, especially looking back on it after just like a couple more episodes in. It's masterful. I also think the characters' reactions to things are really good. Like, none of these people are flawless or one-dimensional or only make good decisions, and yet I never feel angry because I never feel like they're doing something that is not reasonable to do in a given situation. Except Kane, I think, the AI that runs this world, who is analogous to the AI who runs the world in For I Have No Mouth But I Must Scream. Because I think there's a point in the story where Kane becomes a character, but before that, the story treats him more as just a component of the world that the other characters have to survive. Like, they start to build his character a little bit in, what was it, episode 3? Was that during the horror stuff when he had his session with Zubul, his therapy session? I think so, right? Yeah. Like, they kind of try to build towards that a little bit there, with him basically having like cyber ADHD, but that was more a character thing for Zubul, where we get the introduction to their body dysmorphia. And I think it's worth pointing out that each of the characters in this has an analogous character in the short story and the subsequent video game. I don't remember what each of them are because I don't remember the characters' names. But Jax is an important one, and this goes back to my thing about him definitely caring about the characters more than he wants anybody to know. In the original short story, if I'm remembering correctly, which I could be misremembering because it's been a long time, the character that he is analogous to frees the other characters from their nightmarish situation in the only way he can. Because the premise of that story is that an AI has taken over the Earth. There are only 5 humans left. It has supreme power over them. It can even change their forms at will. And it basically tortures them. And, like, kind of for entertainment. But it's more just because, like, this thing is, like, inscrutable and nobody understands it. And it doesn't understand anybody. And that's what it does. Because it's an AI. And AI are not one-to-one, like, biological human intelligence, right? So the Jax analogous character, his name I don't remember. I thought I remembered it, but I don't. He kills them all to spare them from this hell. And then the AI, whose name I also don't remember, like, mutates him into a hideous form where he can't, like, really interact with the world or express anything. He just exists in misery. And that's where the title comes from. He has no mouth, but he really, really wants to scream. And, like, I feel like Jax does that a lot too. He makes little sacrifices that nobody else understands for these other characters, but he does it all while trying to maintain this self-image, this facade of himself. And the two things clash with each other constantly. Like, it's pretty well assumed in the fandom now that the abstractions, the effective deaths of this other character called Ribbit and maybe Kaufmo too, were kind of a side effect of the way he interacted with them, pushing them away for some reason, or else something else happened and then they abstracted and he started pushing people away more because he didn't want to feel that way again. But in some way, he might feel responsible for that. And yet, in episode 6 especially, he's still pushing people away and alienating them and making them feel bad about themselves to spare himself, even knowing what that might cause to happen to them and what that might cause to happen to him, because he might abstract too from like the loneliness and the guilt of treating people that way when he genuinely cares about them. It's all about like reaching your psychological breaking point. But all of them have analogous characters, except for Pomni. Pomni is a wild card. Because like the story obviously started for these other characters before she arrived, but the story itself starts when she gets there. And in many ways, her showing up does cause things to happen more rapidly than they were. Characters interact with each other in different ways than they usually would, in part because she's there, and that's mixing up how the characters are all interacting with each other, having a new person there to introduce this world to. But it also seems like she kind of sits and listens to people when others wouldn't, just because of the kind of person she is. She's very intuitive and very emotionally intelligent. She picks up on the fact that Kinger, for example, who is usually pretty crazy, calms down and levels out and regains a bit of his lucidity in the dark. She's also kind of naturally talented at using the abilities that these people have here, which none of them even really know about, and yet she's still kind of able to do it. Like, she's able to just kind of make things happen. And she's generally smart and observant. Like in episode 2, for example, she's able to recollect something that happened to her in a stressful moment and use it to save herself from the situation she gets herself in. So she just happens to shift the paradigm of this place just enough for new kinds of things to start to happen. And it helps that Kane is getting ready for this really big project, because he gives them all these adventures to complete. He's getting ready to implement like his biggest one, which ends up being kind of where everything falls apart, because he doesn't understand these people, right? He doesn't really get them. But he's able to use Pomni to facilitate that, because she's new. She's someone who is still actively looking to find a way out. Everyone else has kind of moved on from that for their own sanity, but she is still new enough to be actively looking for that. And so when he starts this adventure happening, the character who is kind of his avatar in the story, who we're supposed to think is a human, but they're not, they're an NPC that he created, comes to Pomni because she's the one that will listen to him. And just briefly, I want to talk about how great that episode is in the first place. Like, episode 7, beach episode. Kane is a bad writer. He's tropey in all the worst ways. Like, they sum it up in episode 3 when they find it's a horror episode based on like indie horror games, and Kinger finds a tape in exactly the wrong spot for you to be able to do what's on the tape, and he remarks that this is really inconvenient lore placement, and that sums up Kane in a nutshell. They need to not look at the monster so it can move, so he puts them in a place where they can't look at the monster, and then tells them to look at the monster. He writes things into his story the same way Philip J. Fry writes things into the story he uses to banish those aliens from the planet that one time. He writes things to happen just because they need to happen. But episode 7 shows where he does have potential, because he gives so many of the characters the right things to do for their skill sets in the completion of this adventure. But he also has his avatar character, Abel, say things that a human trying to escape this place just wouldn't say. And he, like, there's little bees drawn on Abel's map of the circus, like it's a diagram of the circus that he's been compiling to aid them on this quest. And the little bees are like Kane's signature. So, like, never once over the course of that episode did I fall for Abel's spiel, right? It was obvious that he was lying. Now, I thought maybe he was actually a human that was just working with Kane. But no, it turned out he was just an NPC, which ended up being funnier, so that's fine. But man, that says so much about the character. Like, he can do it. He can write pretty good stuff. He's just not there yet. And yet he's a narcissist. He's convinced that he is. That he has to be good at it because it's the only thing he actually likes to do. It's the thing he was made to do, to create these scenarios, which isn't even entirely true. It's just how he's, like, interpreting his purpose, but that's beside the point. So he doesn't work at it. He doesn't take criticism well. He doesn't try to improve. He doesn't take suggestions, even though when he writes something based on someone's suggestion, he tends to do a better job of it. Like, doesn't that just paint such a complete picture of who this guy is without you having to know anything else about him? It's so good. It's so good. Also love the way the show handles foreshadowing. Like, I think maybe my favorite example is, I mentioned it briefly earlier, in episode 2, Pomni wakes up from a nightmare, falls out of bed, lands on a wooden block, which bounces her up to the ceiling and around the room. It's a graphical glitch, a collision glitch, I guess, would be what it is, technically. That's the thing that she recalls later, even though she was in a stressful situation at the time, and I probably wouldn't have recalled why I went bouncing around the room, you know? But not only does that prime us to recall, because they showed it in episode 1 too, it primes us to recall that video game glitches like clipping and collision glitches can happen in this world, because it is basically a computer game world. So we're prepared when Pomni and Gummy Goo glitch beneath the Candy Canyon Kingdom map. But it also primes us to understand what Pomni is doing and why, when she puts cubes underneath the truck that they find down there, and then spins them around by spinning the wheels to launch them back up to the map. And it primes us to understand what's going on when Abel uses those bad cube collisions to launch the characters to a point in the circus tent that they otherwise couldn't reach in episode 7. And this happens so often. Like, sometimes it's just like they foreshadowed the fact that the characters don't need to breathe before they end up in a situation where they have to not breathe. But, like, then we go to the digital lake later, and Pomni's able to swim around under the water for minutes on end and even talk under there. They don't have to tell us how she's doing that. We just already know. And like I mentioned, Zubul has body dysmorphia issues. We see that throughout the show. We see how they interact with that aspect of themselves. And then we see how in one scene with Gangle in a later episode, they're able to kind of start really working through that issue in ways that no one else has been able to help them work through that issue, because they're given a completely different perspective. It's simple. It's handled usually, like each instance of this is handled usually in like 1 or 2 lines of dialogue. And yet it all comes together so cohesively. And so because of that, I have some predictions about what's going to happen in the finale. And that's why I'm recording this the day before it comes out in theaters. I want to make sure I am unspoiled on this, because I guarantee I'm going to start seeing stuff on Tumblr about the finale probably tomorrow, right? This is going to go up after it's come out in theaters, but like, I'm recording it before. That's very important to understand. I think that in bringing Pomni in, this character that has no analog in the original story, Goose is gearing up to give these characters a happy ending, for the most part. Which, even in the video game version of the source material, which I have not played, so I could be wrong about this, but I kind of read about generally, what happens in it. It's still not like a great ending for them, right? And I certainly wouldn't call the ending of the short story a happy ending, right? So it's very different, very much an inversion of the original, if I'm right about where this is going. A lot of people think it shouldn't have a happy ending because it's such a depressing story overall, but I completely disagree. I think these characters deserve a happy ending. I think that's what she's gearing up to. I also think the abstraction of Kaufmo in episode 1, we have never met Kaufmo pre-abstraction, but his abstraction has lingered over the entire show. It gave us context for what happened to Kinger's wife, Queenie. It gave us context to what happened to all those characters whose faces are crossed out on the bedroom doors when we go down the bedroom hallway. And the way the characters reacted to his abstraction and just generally react to his continued existence in that state, the knowledge of it in every scene post that, it's had such a lingering effect on the story without us ever knowing him in his previous form. But I think, man, as much as I hate to say this, because I love all these characters so much, I hope it's not Zubul. I can't imagine why it would be, from a story perspective. Zubul's the best one, by the way. Just straight up. I think somebody needs to abstract. Somebody we know, somebody we've gotten to know, needs to abstract. And I think it's either going to be Pomni or Jax, because they are, according to Goose herself, the main characters of the show. And while it would make sense to be Pomni, the history in media of female characters being fridged to facilitate the development of other characters is kind of, gross. So I don't necessarily want to see that. I don't think fridging is generally great in general. But, I'd rather it not be the girl main character, honestly. It could be her, though, because, again, I mentioned she doesn't have an analog in the original story. So she might exist just to die, just to facilitate the changes in these characters that they need as a foundation to move on and be happier in response to her death, and then die, right? But I think it's more likely to be Jax, because I mentioned the analog of his character in the original story ends up deformed as a consequence of saving the other characters in whatever way he can. So I think him abstracting, just as a catalyst for these characters becoming closer together and living their best lives afterwards, would be a great way to honor that fate for his analog character while still remaining true to what the circus is. I even have an idea, I think, of how he ended up where he is, how he ended up so obsessed with keeping people distant from him, despite the fact that he wants people to laugh with him, and he cares about these people, and he wants them to have a specific image of him. I think, because we know he was really close friends with Ribbit, the little frog character whose face is crossed out on their door, so we know they've abstracted. And I'm pretty sure Ribbit is the female voice we hear in the trailer for episode 9. So I think they had a relationship, more than just a friendship relationship. I think Kaufman was friends with both of them, but I think they were really, really close. And I also think Jax is a very self-conscious, closeted, I assume trans woman, because I'm going to continue to use he despite thinking this, because that's the pronoun he very clearly wants people to use. When he talks about weird things like his bunny form being the pinnacle of masculinity or whatever, which is just a weird thing to say unless you're performing masculinity super hard, right? So I think He is a closeted trans person who is very, very self-conscious about that. And I even think Zubul was picked up on it a little bit. I think maybe everybody had started to pick up on it a little bit prior to Ribbit abstracting. But Ribbit really picked up on it, and I think either she was not accepting of that, which I find unlikely because his memories of her seem to be really bittersweet, and I think he'd be more angry with her if it was like that, or she was too accepting. And that triggered him in some way, and that led to a rift between them, which, whether it did or didn't contribute to her abstraction, Jax thinks it did. And I think maybe the other characters also kind of think it did. And that's why they're kind of scared of Jax. I definitely think that could contribute to him wanting to push everybody away and put up a facade, don't you? And so I think with everything that happened in episode 8, with the circus basically falling apart, with all the other emotional stuff Jax has been dealing with, his 2 closest friends being gone, feeling like he has no one he can rely on, feeling like he doesn't deserve to have people to rely on, maybe, feeling like it would be bad for them if he relied on them, maybe, I think he's going to abstract. And I think that is in some way going to be a catalyst for these other characters to grow together and find maybe not a perfect ending, but a better one than you would have expected based on the content of the show up to this point. I also have a thought about, we see some flashes of what we assume is Jax's real life in episode 7, prior to him, seemingly trapping everyone in the game forever, because he doesn't want to go back to the real world. We see some of that, and it's him driving away from something in what looks like a residential neighborhood. I think he had an altercation with his parents, and either got kicked out or ran away from home, and I think that ties back to his impending transness. Because that, if I were in that situation, and I now found myself in a world where I can do whatever I want, whenever I want, even if it does suck sometimes. Having to choose between that and going back to a world where my bigoted parents hate me for who I am, I'd probably make the same choice he did, frankly. That's it. That's my theories about it. Go watch this freaking show, though, if you haven't. I swear, you'll love it. It's so good. And I'm so sad that it's only going to be 9 episodes. Because, these characters are so good and I love them so much. I could just watch, 40 episodes of filler with them just going on Kane's adventures, right? You can't watch this show and come out of it able to tell me that you don't agree with that. It's so very good. It's so very good. And, as soon as I have the time, I'm gonna be checking out Moira Goose's stuff. And, man, I hope she does more after this. I'm gonna be watching for her to do more stuff, because this is, I said it before, once in a generation type of storyteller. Honestly, kind of jealous. I'm also going to be keeping an eye out in the finale for evidence for a theory that I've seen. Again, I haven't delved into much of Goose's other stuff, but I know she has another show that aesthetically and even kind of tonally is kind of similar to Digital Circus. It's just weird characters in their own world with cities and stuff, right? And I know some people are theorizing that The Amazing Digital Circus is a prequel to that somehow. So I am going to be looking in the finale for evidence of that too. I think that's a really fun theory. I really like connected universe theories. But yeah, watch for this show if you haven't. The final episode goes up on YouTube, when was it, the 12th of this month, I think. If that's wrong, I will put the real date in text on the screen for you guys. But the point is, you have time to watch it. It's 8 episodes so far. They're about half an hour each. I have heard, I don't know if this is true, but I have heard that if you go see it in the theater, if you are in an area where you can go see it in the theater, it'll have kind of like a recap of the whole series before it. So maybe if you don't have time to watch 4 hours of YouTube videos, you could just, do that. But, like, I'd just recommend watching the actual things. Or find a reactor you like who watched it and watch their reactions to it. There are a lot of good ones. And I know a lot of people, they think this show is not this deep. They look at it and they say this is goofy. They see the characters from it showing up in like kids content, like brain rot shit. Don't believe that. That's just dumb creators taking advantage of the fact that this show is popular to get kids to watch their stuff. This is a good show. It's very, very sophisticated despite the way it looks. And I have not ever heard of anyone checking it out and regretting it. But, yeah, that's all I have to say on that. I'm going to stop before I ramble any more than I already have. Content is returning, like I mentioned. I am going to be doing more of my regular stuff soon. But I also want to do more stuff like this, where I just talk about something kind of one-off, off the cuff. I barely even scripted this, in case you couldn't tell. So, what are other things, I guess, that you guys think you'd like to see me talk about? Just, like, other random stuff, like popular stuff, unpopular stuff, whatever. If it's a thing that you think I might be interested in talking about, let me know. I might agree with you. Videos like this are probably going to happen from time to time, where I'll be like, man, I want to talk about this thing, and then I sit down in front of the camera and do that. In the meantime, what do you think of The Amazing Digital Circus? Do not spoil the last episode for me if you've seen it, either in this leak that I've heard is about, or in the theater. I genuinely do not want to know until I watch it myself. But otherwise, what do you think about the series? Do you agree with me? You disagree? I mean, you can talk about your theories about the finale if you want. Do you think mine's good? Do you have a different idea of what might happen? I'd love to hear it, if you do. So let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below. But in the meantime, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.